Hello everyone, this is Calvin Castine. We're coming to you today from Mooers, and these two friendly gentlemen here. Jack's got his arm around this man in the middle. We have Mr. Jack Dragoon and Paul Seymour. And our topic of discussion today is going to be the dissolving or dissolution, or how do you pronounce that word?
Dissolution.
Dissolution of the Village of Mooers, which is coming to a vote on Tuesday, March 15th. And I thought maybe I'd contact the town supervisor, but the town supervisor said he'd talk to me, but as a citizen and not necessarily as a town supervisor. So that's why Jack's here. And Jack, you and I should feel honored with this man here in the middle. All those Ford commercials here. This guy is known.
Number one, I believe.
Oh yes, yeah.
Tell us about that. How does a man get into a Ford commercial when he's stuck up here in Mooers?
Well, you've got to be honest.
Honest.
Yeah, you've got to be honest. You have to have an honest face, of course.
Uh-huh.
And they have to really like your voice.
Like your voice.
You have to work cheap.
Work cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Any one of those three will do it.
Any one of those three.
And
that leaves you two out.
I work cheap, so I could have done it, but I struck out in the other two. Going down on 2 strikes.
Well, I'm a big follower of Ford. You can
Yes,
see that.
yes, I know that. Oh, you have to mention. Did we mention the name before? I don't think we mentioned it.
We have to mention the name. Wherever I go, we've got to talk about Ford Motor Company.
Okay.
That's in the contract.
Okay. Will there be more of this? Is this going to be like those telephone commercials where they have a little, the Sanka commercials where they have a little continuation?
No, I think this is it. I've had my 15 seconds of fame on almost national television.
Okay. Just before we got here, Robin Leach was here doing the story, and he just left. Where'd you get this couch, Paul?
I purchased this couch from a wonderful gentleman right here in Mooers.
Yeah.
You know, as you may know, we do have some businesses here in the Village of Mooers, and one of those businesses is just down the road. That's Manette's Furniture, and I certainly should put in a plug for this gentleman because he's very close to me. Very near and dear.
Very near and dear. Well, that's nice.
But it's for sale.
If you want to come here and make a bid on any of his furniture, just stop in. We're not here to talk about this other foolishness, though. We're here to talk about a very serious subject. After 94 years, is it? Is it 94 years?
I believe it's 94.
That's what the record shows.
You were
Someplace.
You were in grade school then, Jack, when this village was incorporated?
Probably just thinking about it back then.
The village vote, for those of you who are unfamiliar, and I don't imagine there are too many people unfamiliar with what we're talking about, the residents of the Village of Mooers will go to the polls for a special vote on March 15th. Are there any village offices being elected at that time? Any the trustees or mayor?
I'm sure there's going to be a trustee. I think the mayor was the last time around, or not being a voter. I'm not up on that part, but usually there is a trustee.
So there might be more things on the ballot. I think it was in Altona, I think, last fall, where they were consolidating a couple offices, and somebody won an office, and it was dissolved in the same vote. So it would be possible that...
I haven't seen anything in the paper stating to it, but I think, I won't say for sure, but I think Mr. Barlow will be on the ballot, as far as I know.
Okay, Jack, as we stated, is the town supervisor, and a lot of people get town and village confused. I know in Champlain, people think they're talking to the town government, and they go to the village office, and vice versa. That happen a lot here in Mooers?
Quite often, it does happen, and people sometimes don't realize who's who and what's up. And we get quite a few calls during the day for different problems, and we have to steer them to the right direction.
And of course, you're rather accessible right there at the farm equipment, right?
Well, we do have a town number to call, and we do have town clerk. He has certain hours he stays open, but we do have a secretary, and we have a highway department, which in the morning there's a lady on. We'll take calls for problems. So there is places to contact.
Okay. What are some of the points, either of you gentlemen, I know you've got some notes there, Jack, concerning the dissolvement, one way or the other, that you think, some stuff that's going around that you think ought to be covered?
Well, reading the editorial, there's different things. It's, they don't think, all the questions are really out to inform some people. I've been contacted, and, some people are puzzled after reading it, and should they dissolve or shouldn't dissolve, and you try to give them an honest opinion. It's hard being a fireman and being a supervisor and also a taxpayer. And I've got to take all into consideration, and we try to, I will answer the best or do the best as I can in answer. I'm not Paul, he's on television, he's used to it. I had to put a few notes together because I'm not the expertise.
This man was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. He can just keep talking forever, this man.
Yes,
you
he
see
can.
him in the ad on laying on the bed.
No, I think we're speaking about you.
No, talk about you. After, being on the bed commercial and this and that.
That was a classic when he broke into the bedroom and that Manette's Furniture
That's
commercial
right,
there.
boy.
That was
If
scary.
he'll do that, he'd probably do anything.
And nearly.
But, I think I do owe the taxpayers a response to a few of these questions that has appeared. And like I said, I have got notes. And it says, speaking about the loss if the village was to dissolve, it would be no loss existing services at all, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just a supervisor, but we do have a fine board, and they're understandable. And
What are some of the services that the village provides now? I know, like snow removal, that's done through the town. The village doesn't own any snow removal equipment, not even a shovel, I believe, right?
well, I don't think they have too much of anything. They do not have, as far as I know. Well, I know there's no full-time employees, and they don't own any plow equipment or street equipment. As far as I know, I don't think they hardly own anything, because one time after a good windstorm, our highway superintendent was called in, and we had brought trucks down, and we've tried to work with the village. So after the storm, picking up trees and what have you, and also sometimes there's some potholes, and they'll call Ken, as our superintendent now, about patching up potholes. And for example, yes, on the Depot Street a while back, there was a water problem with so much snow we had, and we try to solve their problems. And the dams, another time we had problems, which the town helped out pretty much. Got very little pay for it, but it's a small community. You do have to work together.
What are the services then that the village provides? Paul, you're a village resident.
At this particular point, I think that the main services that are provided directly by the village to nearly all of us are basically street lighting. Most of the other services that are provided by the village, to my understanding, are provided really basically through the village by the town. I mean, the village is really contracting with the town for almost every service that we now receive. I feel personally, of course, that the village is really duplicating, and our record does indicate that the village is really duplicating the services of the town, because the town has the wherewithal to provide us with snow removal and tree care and street work of any kind, and I would assume that that's going to continue in the future, just the way it has in the past.
So your feel is just an extra middleman, so to speak, and
Yes, my largest bone of contention with the existence of our particular village is that, if you recall, in 1983, 11 years ago, we had a movement in the village to dissolve the village at that particular time. I was a taxpayer, but not a resident of this particular village, and was approached to see what I could do to find out what steps had to be taken to go ahead and dissolve the village. So I contacted my personal attorney and received a written report from him as the steps to take to proceed in the bringing the dissolution to a vote, which of course we're going to have this coming week. We, the villagers and myself, secured enough signatures to bring it forth to a vote, but at that particular time, for whatever reason, it really never got that far, and nothing was done. My contention at that time, which is still the same contention I have today, that the largest problem I think that we as the villagers in the Village of Mooers have is that there is a certain amount of liability in the existence of any entity at all, whether that be a person or a community. And as a community, we are collectively responsible for potentially some very large lawsuits that, of course, could occur here in the village, or some catastrophe of any other sort. And since my airing of my particular views on this 11 years ago, most of you know we have had a catastrophe in the Village of Mooers, and that to this day, that particular problem has not, while it has been resolved to a degree, has really not been paid for. So regardless of the outcome of this particular vote, we as taxpayers here are going to have to bear the burden of that particular catastrophe, and I feel it should be the last. You know, if this was to occur again, we just do not have the tax base to generate revenue from a reasonable source to pay for these particular types of costs.
Okay, the catastrophe you're referring to was the fuel spill at the fire station at village offices?
That's correct.
Now, okay, so there's still a debt out there. Jack, is the town going to be assuming that debt?
Well,
if the village should dissolve?
Well, I see the dissolve will not take place until 95, so, you know, there's a lot that can happen there, and everything will have to be kind of monitored by that time. And, you know, we want to be fair with everybody, and, you know, I'm sure the town will do their part in it. And to get back to, before you answer the question, I can add a couple. You asked about the services. Well, the village does take care of the sidewalks, some side of the roads, and that is contracted out. And also this last year, there were some big trees removed in the village, and they contracted that out.
So they hire somebody to do that?
Because they used some of their state aid money for road repair, I believe, to do that.
Okay,
of
so
course,
the village,
they're involved with the fire department too. So.
The village has the sidewalk plow. How are the
They
sidewalks?
contracted out.
So they're cleared during the winters, what you're saying?
Oh yeah.
So somebody comes in with a
Right.
sidewalk plow?
No, regular tractors, that doesn't plow it.
See, that puts you ahead of Plattsburgh. They want all the residents to shovel their own walks in Plattsburgh, which I...
Pretty hard here, being so many, you know, there's lots of senior citizens, and it would be pretty hard for them to come to that, because...
Would you foresee that the sidewalks would continue?
Well, they would have to be, because this year sometime there's as high as 3 feet of snow between the snow we have got and the wind.
Is there a sidewalk this far out?
No, they rolled the sidewalks up here in the early 1900s. They haven't been rolled back down yet.
You're probably right on the edge of the village?
On the edge of, I'm the last, I have the distinction of being the last house in the village.
I thought you were the first house in the village.
That's true, that depends whether you're coming or going, I guess.
And I saw a sign on your door, 1833. You're probably pretty close to being the first house in the village.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
In more ways than one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If old Nellie's been here with the village for a long time. Yes. Yes. Years ago, this was the village center.
Here next to Torrance Corners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many years ago. I guess obviously before it was a village. It was the Hamlet's center.
Okay, Jack.
Okay. Well, you know, I hit some of these notes here, and in no way, the people has to make up their mind. I'm just giving, they heard kind of one side in the paper of the story, and I just like to bring it out, and they make their own decisions. I'm not a voter, so they have to do the voting, but after watching 21 and what Champlain is going through, they've had some pretty good size raises, and then they want to go in debt quite a bit. And I said, if you don't say nothing, person that don't say nothing, he's always probably better off, because he's not criticized as much as one that does say something. But I said, knowing what I do know and not saying anything, then to say if it doesn't dissolve, then everything goes right up sky high, then I say that, you know, I can get criticized for that also.
Yeah.
And this way here, if it stays a village, at least I can say I get offered what I know, and all I can say, I told you so. So it can reverse the same way too, but I think I've been a resident here for a few years.
Well, I would think that a vote to dissolve would be more permanent than a vote not to dissolve. If they vote not to dissolve, it could come up again, right?
I think they have to go some like 2 years before,
But if you vote to dissolve, the chances of ever becoming a village again would be rather remote.
it would be.
Now, I know there's some panic about, we want to have an identity, but when you look at Shazy, I don't think anybody, probably half the people out there don't realize there's no village of Shazy. It's just a hamlet. Just like West Shazy is a hamlet, and Mooers Forks is a hamlet, and Mooers has become a
You
hamlet.
got Sido, you got like
Irona
you got Cannon, Scorners,
and Forest. Let's not forget Forest.
you got Wood Falls, like down there. My grandfather come from Angelville way, and you call it Angelville.
Uh-huh.
And Perry's Mills, you got Jamblin, so I can't see identity is still going to be, no matter, it's still going to be called the Village of Mooers as far as I'm concerned. I would say 95% of the time. And getting back to some of these others, is brought up about the beautification center. We do have a beautiful building, I think. The village does deserve credit. But the firemen, I think, deserve probably a little bit more, because it was the firemen's foresight to expand to begin with. But the village did take hold and went along with it. So that part, and the town has done some work, and we have, provided some services there. Well, not. And also the public library was brought up about the village. Well, for years the town has been donating money towards the library also, for just one set. For example, this year is $2,850 we will be donating.
Would you conceive that it's possible that the town would look at least increasing the amount based on the library losing revenue from the village?
Right. I really don't know how much the village gives now, but I'm sure we're going to be, by all means, match whatever they're giving. Maybe we can see a little bit more.
Well, and obviously we're not going to lose the library because we dissolved the village. I mean,
I think the library pretty near runs by itself, and we have some dedicated people. You take Mr. and Mrs. Hogan, they put up lots of time, and there's other ones that's put up the board of directors, and they have their own board, I believe, too.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they rely on this money for their small budget. That they get some from the school districts, they get some from the village, and some from the town. That's where they need every penny of that. So
campaigns, raising funds too.
2 cents per book overdue. That adds up.
Sure does.
those of us that read.
Then it was brought up about village billing and maintaining. Paul, pick up your toy, would you please? Wow.
We are not alone in this room.
For example, they brought up about homes and that. Well, over the last 15 years, it's not probably exactly, but I'm trying to get on close. I would say there's about 5 new homes that's been built in this village. And roughly there's been 5 homes lost due to fire. But there's been some additions built, and there's been businesses addition. But I think our village, the people in it, they have pride in it, and as far as maintaining, upkeeping it, I think our village are been upkeeper just as well as any other town around that has villages.
Well, you may have seen some of the stories we've done with what's going on here with Bob Bend and that show, and we've recently talked to the Vogans, and we had some pictures a little history of Mooers that were provided, and the story we did with Larry Marnes and the railroad. There have been, like a lot of places, there were a lot more businesses probably than we think about now. Champlain's the same way. Downtown Champlain used to have a lot of businesses down there, but it's, we're now into malls, so there's probably not as large a business community as there was in the past. You wouldn't think so until you start thinking about it.
Well, we used to have the railroad station. Matter of fact, that's where our machinery used to come in right there over to the depot, and it was pretty nice to go over there and unload the machinery right there, and your freight was so much cheaper. That's dissolved, but no part of the village causing it. Right across the road, we used to have a slipper factory. That's been tore down. Down farther, we used to make cement blocks here, Mr. Deno. I don't know if you remember that. That's where the theater building is. So then it was turned into a theater. Now that's gone. The theater's gone, but it's taken over by Trimex, which is doing a fine job. And let's see, across from the theater, there used to be a little grocery store there. Smith's used to have a grocery store there. Then you can come up the road from the theater. There used to be where Marnes is there. There used to be a Sunoco. His grandfather had there. It was a Sunoco gas station. Then coming up farther, Manette's, which just used to be Lewis's and Manette's, the Seymours. And then we used to have a funeral home. Ralph Lewis is there.
You still have a funeral home. Different
We
site.
have it, and it's up the street. And then Willette's Garage, used to be able to work on cars. Now the village, we don't have any. There used to be a store in part of where the Peck's place is there. There used to be, I remember years ago, bagging potatoes there. Mr. Smith, I think he was from Malone or that. Then Manette's took it over. I guess they sold it there.
Once in a while, you get some good people that come from out of the Malone area.
Oh, yeah.
On occasion.
They come from right around. Of course, then we had the hotel, which is now an apartment building. And then we have the restaurant there, which is now Samples. We used to have little gas pumps in front of there. And across, when we got my grandfather, he used to have a store there, Ray's store. That was right there in the village. Then we had the telephone company, operators, and of course they're gone.
IGA.
Then up farther we had the IGA, and before that there was another barber shop between there and Company's restaurant in the back. Plus the barber shop, Clarence Valley, we also have, fortunate to have a barber there. And then we got to back up, we used to have a dentist up over the insurance places where we do have insurance, the largest insurance there. And then across the road we used to have Merritt's. There was a big block there before that.
Next to the barges?
Yeah, this side of the barges, there used to be, but then Merritt had a gas station there. Used to be a mobile station there, and that's gone. And then Sherwood Brooks had the feed store, used to be a feed store. Of course, that's changed hands a couple of times. The barges has it now. Then you get back across the road. We have there used to be the IGA Finches, which is now apartments and a funeral home. Then we had the Grange Hall, which is gone. Of course, the KC's has that and do a fine job there now. Then we had a Wesleyan Church, that's gone. But we do have the senior housing. And
Well, there's still a Wesleyan church, isn't there?
I take it back, the Presbyterian Church.
Oh,
No, we still have the Wesleyan and the Catholic and the Methodist. Sorry about that. But anyway, without Henry White, we could give him lots of credit, because if it wasn't for Henry driving to get what we have there,
Senior housing.
senior housing, he has a committee, but Henry's the one that did the gearing up on that. And coming up farther, there used to be a little sewing place next to Evelyn Never. That's John Brooks's. That's really out of my county. But then up farther, we had Supernog. He built Moe's there, took over the garage there. We used to sell Rambler and Kaiser's and Henry J's, and did a fine job. So we lost our automobile place there now.
That's where Agway is now.
Agway is now. And we do have beauty salon.
D&N next to the fire station.
Then we have D&N, but that used to be, George Valley had that's where Mr. Smith moved his potato. That was a potato storage place. And before that, then George used to sell used cars and had his gas pumps in the front now, which is D&N. And then we have father built our Dragoons in '53, so that place has been going. And then we used to have Al's, the little diner right across from our place, which used to be pretty handy. That's probably why it started me here. Of course, take it back near the theater, there used to be a little restaurant there. Al started it, went from there down there, and then Joe Laporte run it for his wife for a while. And let me see. Of course, then after Al's Diner, used to be a pretty good place there. Used to catch Haney sometimes for going across the road on Saturday afternoon, but Peck's had the
Town Tavern.
The Town Tavern there, which done quite a bit of business there until the fire. And going up the road, of course, we have Mark putting up the garage there, and the restaurant they have now, which is now taken over by Sample. I guess the Sample boy and the Miller boy, I guess, is taking over the truck stop.
All that?
So they're looking for business now too. And I guess the next one will be up to Phil. Oh, I forgot, Dr. Davis used to have an office right in the corner, right next to Evelyn Everett's house there. Used to be his house, Doc Davis. We used to have a doctor, we lost to that.
You got a veterinarian now, though.
I can't leave out the vet. We're fortunate to have Doc Evans. And
How about down the other way, the other side of the bridge there by Ernie Samples and Souls? Are there many businesses down that way at any time?
well, before my time, it used to. Well, Ernie sold some used cars for a while there, and then
That's in the village, right?
that's in the village. And there used to be a horse. Or Joe Shawnee there down on the corner, shoe horses and stuff years ago there. So I hope I didn't leave out anybody.
Once you
Pretty
started,
hard-
Jack, you were in trouble. It's a no-win situation
That's
once
right.
you started that.
That's right. And
But so the question was, the village has changed and evolved over the years, and
sure,
Ticonderoga just dissolved, and it seems to me there was another one that in the area too. Was
Chateauguay came up now. I can't tell you what happened there. I'm not sure.
They dissolved or not?
I believe that they did. I think that they elected to keep the signs up, but dissolved the village in Chateauguay.
Well,
But I'm not sure.
Paul gets around a lot more than you and I do, Jack, so
That's
you
right.
have to assume that he knows what he's talking about.
And also, like you got back to the government. It's hard sometimes. Not taking any away from the ones that's in office now, but during the day we do get called because it's hard to get hold of somebody that's in the village during the day.
Yeah, they got work to do. They got jobs to.
It hasn't been much of a problem. We try to. If we can't ask them, we try to steer it right.
What do they get for $200-300 probably for being on the village board type of thing? I don't imagine they get enough to pay their gas. Or
I believe it's up to $1,000, and the mayor, of course, he
$20 a week.
He gets 18, so they're not overpaid, and you add a few dollars here, a few dollars there, it does add up.
Yeah, it's still going to become taxpayers' money. Even the person getting it isn't worth his effort as far as you've got to want to do the job if you're going to be a trustee or a mayor, because you're not going to get paid for what your time is worth.
I guess that's probably with most of the government offices we have in the town now. If you check some of the reports out, we are about the lowest, even the town, we are the lowest paid in the county. So most of us are not in there for money.
A lot of credit has to be given to the village officers also, of course the mayor, for bringing this issue forward. Because, as I stated before, we've been 11 years kind of stewing with this thing on and off, and they, and particularly Mayor Paola, certainly had the foresight or determination, I guess is probably the right word, bring this whole thing to a head and to bring it to a vote.
Well, it's got to be an emotional issue for some people. I remember when the enhanced 911 wanted the Village of Rouse's Point to change their numbers on the streets. They refused to do it. People had a number and they were attached to that number. So I can imagine people are attached to being in a village, and it's an emotional issue. I live in a rural area, so my box number changed periodically without me moving. And so I didn't bother me what number I am, but certain people, they've lived at 59 Main Street, they want to live at 59 Main Street and not 1150 Main Street.
Yeah. And that certainly is understandable. No question about that.
And it was brought up also about, for example, what different can the town do and what the village. Well, back in '93, we did apply for a grant, $400,000 grant to help some of the homes spruce up a little bit. And
I'd be interested in that grant.
we did not get it. I don't think we would qualify. But anyway, we did not get it, but they have to apply again this year for it. We don't get it in '94, I'm sure, but the people, I forgot how many calls, but some of the letters, they went out in a hurry. They hit a lot of these homes. They did leave notices in some of their houses, and they call like our office. But for example, if this grant came true, there's no way that any of this money could be spent in the village.
That's what my question was going to be, because as long as there's a separate government entity, and you probably, like when the town of Champlain did it, you couldn't include the Village of Champlain or the Village of Rouse's Point because they have their own entity as a government, so they have to make their own applications. I hope you don't need those to see, Jack.
I don't do them. I'm doing very well about it. But anyway, another thing is too, people don't realize, but they say, well, it'd be a lot more work on the town. Well, some degree there is, but right now, like we have a general account inside, outside, a DA, they call it, a DB. We have a highway, DA, DB. So that's if it was to dissolve, you just have one account and the money would be there. If we get sales tax money back at the end of the year, we cannot use it for anything pertaining to the people in the village. We can't use certain funds.
Well, your sales tax money you get back from the county go down because you only have one government entity now instead of two?
I don't think it might vary a little, but very a little different. You see, the village takes theirs money in cash. The town, we apply ours to the county tax. So it doesn't really look like the village is or the town has much county tax, but the reason they don't have, we're applying $4 or something like that, some odd cent towards it, and it comes up to $1.15 or so. And of course, the village is taking theirs, which they have the tax there.
Do you need those glasses you dropped?
No, not at all. I'm just reading a few things.
Who are glasses for this gentleman here?
No, I haven't used it so far, but
Well, while he's reading there, Paul, you got anything to pipe in here? You never had a loss for words?
Not normally.
No.
I'm not normally at a loss for words, but I don't know. I think that as a resident of the Village of Mooers, obviously I'm very pleased to see this come to a head and come to a vote. I certainly would hope that as many villagers as possible would go out and certainly vote their conscience.
Any idea how many people we're talking about?
I believe we have a couple hundred registered voters.
well, the population of the village is 467, and qualified voters are probably maybe 225 or 250. Could be, I guess.
So it's going to be one of the smallest villages in the...
Well, at the meeting they had, it was brought up we were the smallest, but now maybe there's one smaller than.
Yeah, that does bring to mind a point that actually reminds me of that indirectly. That's what you're here for, though.
That's my job.
That we have the distinction of being either the smallest or the second smallest village in the state of New York, and that particular distinction is ours, I believe, because other small entities such as ourselves have seen the handwriting on the wall and decided that it is just not feasible to continue on as a separate entity and have, of course, merge with their towns and their or cities, whatever the case may be, in their particular areas.
But you can promote that as a tourist attraction. The smallest village.
Well, we might still and not tell the whole truth.
I don't think you and the people realize, but our population from the count we did in 1980 to 1990, there's about 80 less people in the village today.
That's not because Paul moved into the village, though, is it?
It might have something to do with it.
Well, he brought a few in the village.
But a lot of people moved out and they moved in.
As soon as they heard I was coming,
they knew Paul was coming.
Yeah.
And then it was brought up, for example, about water and sewer. I, for one, I would love to have it.
You're in favor of water and sewer?
I would be, if it was everything granted and paid for and don't have to pay very little for it. But with the amount of residents we have, it's going to cost millions of dollars. And if you took 200 places, for example, it would cost probably $50,000 per household. And I also broke it up, just for the hang of it. I just took some guesses, and I was very lenient on them. Because I put something like, for example, $3 million for water and sewers. Mm-hmm. And I was told after it probably would be $10 million. And then I took, if the government would pay 80% of the, I'm using a $3 million figure. If they would pay 80%, that would leave 20 for the taxpayers to pay. And then you say, well, it's got to be maintained. And this is the thing today, is maintain it and keep it going.
Yes.
Employees and electricity and building and fuel and everything else. So I figured probably, let's say $500,000 per year, and I think that's pretty lenient too. And of course you go by rates, but I just went by valuation. It would cost the average household about $3,500 extra in taxes per year, and that's just minimal. It's not. It could be run a lot more than that. And people out in the farther out has got wells and sewer systems which are okay. They're not going to get into it, so then it would be a greater burden, and the businesses would hit tremendously about it.
Well, the story I saw in the paper, it mentioned that there's a lot of pollution. I can imagine with houses in close proximity that septic systems could be affecting other people's wells or their own wells. Is that a problem that you're aware of to the people in the village?
Well, I got to admit that there's some solutions that should be done to correct their problems, and being close together and that. And also, some people don't realize we got flat rock in the village. You take near the school, for example, the rock is coming out of the ground over on one side where Knapp's lumber yard used to be there. Forgot that one. We used to have a lumber yard there. And the rock is sticking out of the ground there. Then we would have a river to cross. Got people on the opposite side of the river. And, yeah, it would be, sounds nice. But you put the figures together, and I can't see any way, unless some rich person donated millions and millions of dollars, like maybe Paul someday could do, would be able to survive.
Back to your question, I think that probably the water problems and the sewer problems certainly have to be fairly isolated, because I haven't heard many complaints in and around the village. Of course, I'm not here all day long, but it has not been a severe problem. I'm sure that obviously with the older systems, there's got to be some problem.
If it's you that's suffering it, it's severe.
Oh, that's right.
Like
absolutely. There's no question about that. Yeah. And
it's only a crisis if you're the one that's unemployed.
I'm in that case, I'm fortunate enough to be on the edge of the village and have quite a large lot.
Yeah.
So that
rather large estate here.
Sure. Oh yeah, this is the Ponderosa, we call this.
then they brought in about paying a little bit more in taxes. Well, if you pay a little more, but you take let's just say, for example, you're using a $50,000 house valuation. Now, according to the committee, this committee worked quite they had quite a pamphlet out of how they came up with figures from the house in Morris Forks and in Cannons and in the Village, and they came up with $1.91 saving. Well, you take the $1.91, let's call it round out to $2 difference. Then if you raise $5, which a mayor is,
Which they're expecting to do.
he's telling the people right out straight, and I'll give him, Larry credit, because some would try to probably hush it up a little bit, but he's telling the people how it is, which it should be. If you add $5 to the $2, you're $7. If you got a $50,000 house, so that's
$250.
$350.
Well, extra.
That's right.
$5 increase would be $250.
Right,
yeah,
but if you're
$2
savings. Today,
Our math, none of our math is really that good today, I can tell.
but in our today's time, where everything else is going up and up, and it's not a big savings to the town people, but it's for the village benefit and the taxpayers benefit. And as you know, taxes today and businesses today we have lots of taxes that people don't even realize. I don't know if you realize, for your fuel oil, for example. Now, Paul buys fuel oil, he pays 3 cents a gallon tax on it. Let's use a 90 cent figure. So he's paying 90 cents a gallon and he's paying 3 cents tax on it. I've got a business, and plus these other businesses in town, we're paying 90 cents. But our famous state government is throwing on another 14%. And then we're paying 7% sales tax on top of that. Do you call that fair to be in business? And we got lots more taxes like this that people don't even realize. So owning a business, if you can save a few bucks, the buck saved today is just like going out and trying to make it.
And going back to your $350 figure, I think that to many of the residents here in the village, if we do in fact assume that the services are being duplicated, there's nothing wrong with a household saving $350 that they can use for something else. I mean, I certainly don't have any problem with that.
I would say so.
Use that to become viewer patrons of Hometown Cable.
Yes, that's right. And everybody should be on it. And we got lots. I'm not like myself. I told one of my sons, hey, you're going to be paying taxes, and your grandchildren are going to be paying taxes and keeping everything going. You and me, we're pretty close up over the hill. So
I'd rather not be
we
included
can
over the hill, thank
a
you.
few years, but I'm looking at these senior citizens and the younger people is trying to make a go of it today, and it's hard, and it's going to be still getting harder. And for example, I had a house to sell in the village. I had buyers that would come in. The first thing they say, how come your taxes are so high? So we're moving in from this other community. Our taxes is half as what we're paying.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we have a high school tax, and then you add the other taxes. But then if you add another $5 to it, how do you think? Just take realistic for example. Paul's got a house. Let's say right next door, outside this limit line, and he's paying $7 a thousand less than what Paul's paying here.
Because it's one's in the village and one's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When somebody is buying a house, which would be more appealing? Something that you pay less on, or something you pay more on? And it's nobody's fault or why. It's just that the village has not grown and probably will not grow. And if it goes up to $7 a thousand, I'm sure it's not going to grow at all. It will decrease. So once a person, and in some of these other older houses, it's going to be hard for people to sell. And as you know, we got
Harder than it is already.
And it's hard to sell because I've been involved, or I've seen too, and you really hardly can sell unless you
Then the folks at Kavanaugh Realty wouldn't like that if houses are hard to sell, right?
Absolutely not. And listen, we should also put a little plug in for Kavanaugh's, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Linda, who? They should call?
Linda Seymour, Kavanaugh Realty. Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
but you know, after,
She doesn't have any problem selling houses anywhere.
Doesn't-
John, we just never mind that.
well, you know, after being in the village, you know, say, well, you're in the town and this and that, but still, I've been in the village 53 years. And I feel I'm just as much as a village resident, just probably, I pay quite a bit in taxes. And involved in the fire department and everything, so it's hard to say too much one way or the other, but I'm looking out for the best interests of everybody, and I think it's, the department needs fire department needs a lot of praise, because if it wasn't for them, what they do, they've saved the village money, they've saved the town money, there's no question, but their fundraisers, the doings we have, it's everybody, village people, but it's also, there's a lots of town people supports everything that is going on.
Yeah, but Jack, we let the fire department go out and earn all this money, make all this money, because then we give them the pleasure of going out in 20 below zero and fighting fires and going out and there's a car accident. You don't understand. They should be honored.
Sounds perfectly logical to me.
Well, right now I can't praise my horn too high because I kind of sit back now. The younger generation does that, but I don't think you've ever been out probably in your life 20 below or 25 when your gloves freeze on your hands and the time that the big fire in Mooers Forks there.
Jack,
I would have to go inside the building to thaw out before you can even take your. It's quite a people don't realize it, and there's a lot that does. And then the rescue squad we have here too with Barrington Dunn, and they bought the equipment, they furnish the equipment, and they maintain the equipment. So there's not too many that would do that today. But we do have a lots of good people in the village and town. I don't care if it's youth programs or anything else. We get by and just making it better for everybody. And let's see.
We restart time.
The camera's still rolling. If you want to take a break right now and check your notes, we can do that.
I can do that too, but first,
Okay.
I was watching